YouTube channel.
Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, that guy, how can that be possible? The brain, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the cartoon comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just read two sources. Whenever I try to prove out, it's not. You expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions, eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Kima Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that's that.
For the 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is that, and I am live on UCY.TV radio. This is the Ochelli Effect. I'm Chuck Ochelli, your host. I am not a Bolshevik, Mr. Anon in the chat room. Okay. Thanks so much for tuning in. It is Tuesday night, and of course that means that I do devote this program to the Liberty Beacon Project and all that good stuff. So, of course, my first guest is, as soon as I do get him on the line, will be Roger Landry. And in the second hour, no guest. It'll just be me talking to you about something. And no, I'm not going to torture you about the Feinstein report just yet. I'm working on that, though. Believe it. Anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in. I do appreciate everybody that does. Those that have gone to ucy.tv/TOE, which is where you can find this show and many other shows broadcast live, the chat room, all that good stuff, the call-in number, and then the second hour, if you do feel like calling in, that's perfectly acceptable as well. Anyway, the founder and, of course, main ranter and all of that good stuff, the guy that is on my show just about every single Tuesday, Roger Landry, is on the line with me. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing quite well and always glad to be here, Chuck.
Yeah, and I can't always say the same, but but I'm not miserable today, Roger, so it is an odd day.
Well, you're one of those people, even when you're miserable, you're still respectful, you're still pleasant, you still try to make conversations go in a respectful and pleasant fashion. So when you're miserable, I think it's pretty much self-contained.
I try to be, but I'll tell you, it's a losing battle some days. And on days like today, when we're looking at this report coming out, actually the summary of the report on torture and all that, of course, no big surprises in there for people like you and me, but the American public is having a debate about it. Oh my. So, this is one of those symptoms, though. I mean, it's one of those symptoms, and it's one of those things that that really speaks to where we're going to go tonight, because which article I'm going to cover in the second hour. I'm going to do that myself. And, of course, I already know what you're doing in the first hour here, and I was wondering if you wanted to kick into that or if you had any other announcements that you wanted to get out there.
Something that you've been alluding to for a while, and I keep putting you off. As of December 15th, we start the big push for Earthship Solutions Colorado again. And that is the community that we will be building on the Rio Grande in southern Colorado, just north of Arizona. And it will be a completely off-the-grid community for our power, our water. We will be growing hemp, industrial hemp, to support the community and to expand the community. And we start the push for support and for pilgrims who wish to come out and help us build the community and actually live within the community. We have several individuals who have, and I won't go into this a lot because this is going to be one of my shows in January with you. We're going to have our own power on the land, including solar power and a couple other means of power which are totally revolutionary. And the only outside influence we will have, the only thing that will keep us from being totally off the grid, is we will have internet, and even that will be via satellite. It won't be a cable running onto the property. So no cables, no pipes, no tubes, no sewage lines, no nothing. Everything will be recycled. Everything will be reused. Anything we build will be built from recycled materials or materials straight from the land. The hemp that's grown on the land to help, and our first year we're going to start out with 20 acres, and we're going to double that each year. So everything is going to be done as a self-supporting, self-contained community. We talk about this enough. We talk about solutions. We talk about getting up off of our butts and doing something. Anybody can complain. It doesn't take a whole lot of intelligence to tell people you're not comfortable or you're not happy or you're not pleased. What it does take, some effort, whether it be mental effort or physical effort, is to produce or provide solutions. Earthship Solutions Colorado is not only a solution we can talk about, it's one that I myself, and I founded this project, and I am a firm believer in providing solutions. So I will be there getting my hands dirty, digging, planting crops, digging leach fields for sewage, putting in water cisterns, putting up solar cells, building mud huts, and they're not exactly mud huts, but you do use adobe on the inner and outer walls, which is basically mud. And so all of these things, I will be in the process of helping to facilitate each and every one of these steps that is required to build this community. I will have dirty hands. I will have scraped knees. I will have sweat pouring off of my brow. And I will be talking about that every single day because I'm going to split 8 hours working in my office on the project and 8 hours out in the fields or construction of the homes or whatever. So every day there will be an update to the Liberty Beacon community and everybody else who supports this Liberty Beacon project, the Liberty Beacon project. We'll get a constant update. Whether we have a failure for the day, whether we have a success for the day, whether we have a celebration, whether we have a reason for angst, it will be chronicled on a regular basis. Starting December 15th, we will reactivate the site Earthship Solutions Colorado and several of the groups on Facebook, and we will start the discussion moving forward because planting of the crop, which is going to facilitate the community, happens April 1st of 2015.
Right, and it's also going to be a interesting date to choose. But, it's also going to be a learning facility as well, right?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, we are going to have people who will offer certificates. They have the training, they have the knowledge. Some of them even are certified within those fields. You can come, you can learn how to build an Earthship Solutions style house, learn how to put in a totally natural recycling water system, learn how to plant or bring in the hemp at the end of the season, and you can actually earn certificates for this. We have two options in the state of Colorado. We can either be a corporation or a learning facility. We don't want to be a corporation. Okay? We want to be a learning facility. In order to do that, we must have listed curriculum. We must have listed classes that can somebody can acquire a certificate upon completion from. All of this is already in the works, and the people who will be leading and instructing these classes are people who have been doing this for years. So, again, this is nothing that's coming off the cuff. But I'll tell you, one of the most ignorant, not stupidest, one of the people of the highest level of ignorance who's going to be working on this project is yours truly. I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but I guarantee you I'm going to learn from the ground up, and I'm going to tell y'all everything I learned every single day.
So you'll be the exemplar of what someone could learn there. It'll be great. It'll be great. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to, like I said last year, I cannot wait to get involved in hearing about this. And as soon as Frankie's ready, we will make a trip out there, and we will definitely endeavor to learn something because it's time. It's time, yep. And I definitely want to get in there too. I just got to wait for little boy to be capable of either going with me or staying behind, one or the other. So,
how old is your youngest right now?
Oh, well, you know what? We're just at 6 months. So,
wow.
Yeah. So if you remember when we started talking, I was talking about the baby upcoming. So,
yep.
But he'll be ready sooner than I think a lot of other kids will be, because he didn't get hindered by the vaccines or anything yet. So,
guess what I found out today?
What's that?
There is an activist calendar in New York City put out by Sally Elcordi, who is one of the biggest activists on the planet against vaccines, GMOs, anything that harms humanity. My birthday is August 19th. I just found out that there is a big old picture of myself with the Liberty Beacon written right under it. I am Mr. August on the activist calendar in New York City this year.
Oh, so now
I said, "God, are you serious? I thought you wanted people to look at this thing."
Well, you as a calendar model, I don't know how to respond to that, Roger. But and remember, I'm one of the guys with a face for radio, so I still don't know how to respond to that. But man. Well, you know what? You're having a resonant effect in a lot of places. Anytime that I bring you up to anybody, which I do quite often, because we do work together on a few things, I mention all the time, well, Roger Landry, and they always go, oh, yes, we know Roger Landry. So,
okay, and then you cringe, right?
Well, then I wonder, does that mean I've done myself a favor by dropping your name or not?
Well, you know what?
I'm only kidding with you.
If they're coming from the side of ignorance, then you didn't do yourself any favors. If they're coming from the side of enlightenment, then usually what they would tell about you is not all that negative.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said I was just messing with you a little bit. But so, man, I'm telling you, I'm really excited about the Earthship Solution thing. I know there's a lot of other projects upcoming as well, and we will keep covering those as we go. Actually, if we tried to cover each of the projects that the Liberty Beacon is involved in, it would probably take up this entire show easily, and that would be just kind of giving a base description of each thing. So,
yes,
we'll keep doing this incrementally for you out there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Now, you want me to get into this? Because I'll tell you what, the article I picked and the one I wrote, excuse me, I don't know, I seem to have a very, very irritated throat today, but the article that I picked and the article you picked from the Liberty Beacon to put on your show today, first and second hour, are two very in-your-face articles. The one I wrote, the one we're going to be talking about right now, the title of this article is, What the Blank Has Happened to America, Obama. And the word starts with an F and ends with a K, but I didn't want to put that in the title, so I put an ampersand, a percentage sign, a pound sign, and an and sign as in an email address. And when you use those type of characters, it usually denotes a profanity, or word of profanity. And since there's 4 characters there, and it's a word of profanity, most people would understand what word should actually be there. And that, to me, had to be that way. I never include anything profane in my titles, although most of them are usually in your face. But again, the title is What the Blank Has Happened to America, Obama. And I'm going to tell you, when I wrote this, it was hard for me to type because most of the time my fists were balled up, my jaw was clenched, my eyes were squinted, and it's tough to type when you're in that type of mood. It really is. Chuck, you still with me?
Oh, yeah. I was just having a little trouble unmuting there for a second. But, I totally understand. And, of course, it kind of fits right in with the almost cartoon world we're dealing with regarding this guy at this point. Like I said at the very top of the show, which I know you didn't hear, looking at this whole, debate that's raging about this report and everything, I mean, it is very cartoonish. I mean, we all knew this stuff. This is not a big shocker, and it seems like all this stuff that keeps happening every time we see these interesting things that happen, it is like watching a cartoon go by, because it's really a pale representation of reality that seems to be presented to us at this point in time. And of course, asking this question of the cartoonish Obama is really not something that's too bizarre, and this is exactly how you would represent that 4-letter word in a cartoon, wouldn't you?
Well, have you seen the picture at the top of the article?
Yes, I have.
All right, let me lay this down for your listeners, okay? Does everybody out there remember the sitcom Urkel? I don't remember the actual name of the show, but the character was a young black comedian, and he wore glasses, his pants were up high, he had suspenders, and his name was Urkel. Right,
it was called Family Matters, and Yep.
Okay. And one of his favorite sayings was, "Gee, did I do that?" Well, there's a picture right at the top of this article of Obama with his eyes squinted, his teeth every pearly white showing, this huge grin, and right next to it in big white letters, "Gee, did I do that?" So when you're talking about a cartoonish representation, that's exactly the way I represented that picture, or him, right at the top of this extremely damning article.
Right.
Would you like me to tip into this?
Here we go.
All right. Again, one more time, for anybody who didn't get it, the title is What the Blank Has Happened to America, Obama. Really, what the blank has happened to America? There are so many frustrated Americans today, and this can easily and clearly be seen in our combined displeasure or outright anger at what we so sadly term our leadership. Congress has one of the most dismal approval ratings in history, and our president is not too far behind. From the debacle or disaster of Obamacare to the litany of scandals the White House battles daily, we are now a nation sinking into a quagmire of disarray and discontent with no foreseeable end in sight. Our illustrious leader, of course that's satire, has committed countless acts that would have wrung screams of impeachment from Congress, both of the political parties, and every liberal grassroots organization in existence less than a decade ago. But he seems to be made of Teflon, with nothing, no matter how heinous, sticking to him. Those who populate Congress today are either cowards, under duress, or have given a whole new meaning and depth to the concept of complicity. We as a nation are responsible for, directly or indirectly, the deaths of about 3 million innocents we insanely reterm collateral damage because it sounds less guilty than slaughtered or killed. And these aggressive actions have been greatly expanded and exacerbated by our Nobel Peace Prize winning president across an entire region of the globe. This madness continues daily and the total climbs at an alarming rate. We now have highly trained permanent or special forces in over 160 out of 192 countries on this planet. Our economy and currency are a travesty soon to render this once great nation a third world economic status. Yet nothing is being accomplished to stem this disaster except more egregious spending. That does nothing to soften the economic sufferings of we the people, but instead adds trillions more to our national debt, effectively pouring gasoline on a raging fire. Now Obamacare, contrary to Obama's lie, will add a minimum of $6 trillion more, and that's a very conservative estimate, to the national debt, threatening to destroy what little remains of what used to be the most powerful and prosperous middle class this world has ever seen. So again, we have only managed to kick the can of economic disaster a little further down the proverbial road, but with a catastrophic collapse still looming in our not-too-distant future. Our once valued and admired freedoms and rights, the reason for untold generations of immigration to America, are now a global joke via such tyranny as the Patriot Act, the NDAA rider, and our world standing as the tyrant of the world or the world's bully. We kid ourselves by using the soft term, we're the world's police. But ask yourself, how do you see the modern police in America today? Please understand this is how the world sees America. Our Second Amendment rights, so obviously valued in this country, a country of several 100 million guns in private hands, are being chipped away at with concerted effort through unconstitutional laws and tyranny, such as false flag events. Knowing full well that a majority of Americans and Congress would not support a UN gun control treaty, our illustrious leaders sent Kerry to the UN to sign the treaty anyway. And you had better believe that this will have a negative impact on your right to own guns in this country. We now have free speech zones. Really? Where do you see that in the Constitution? When a government designates when and where you can speak your mind, freedom of speech is dead. Mm-hmm. So in essence, your rights, thoughts, and wishes be damned. We are spied on today by so many different government agencies and sub-agencies that nothing you say or do in private is private anymore. Unless you take a mind-bending and drastic step to ensure any level of isolation against these intrusions. But then again, these very actions will likely throw the light of suspicion on you, making your efforts futile. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't this? Because this sure as hell sounds a lot like the old Soviet-style KGB tyranny we railed so vehemently against a few short decades ago. And then there was the Bundy fiasco, another case of a monolithic government overreaching its constitutional powers to support the corporatist elites. Mm-hmm. For all who still believe that this president and his puppet masters, so intent on selling America out that it's not even well hidden anymore, would back down from boots on the ground, freedom-loving people? Not! So why did they? This begs the explanation that the Bundy fiasco was yet another smokescreen, a distraction for the real tyranny being perpetrated by the boys in the back room. While everybody in America was watching the Bundy Ranch, what was happening in the smoke-filled back rooms by the good old boys? You must all understand that to maintain their hold on power, those who would rule, not govern or represent us, can't just stand by and let we the people set the proverbial precedent by self-enforcing our rights and liberties through protest or mass actions and get away with it. After all, we are only the true governors of this republic. Those actions, if left unchecked, would serve to embolden many more Americans to jump on the bandwagon every time tyranny reared its ugly head, and erode or remove the fear and compliance this government has worked so hard and for so long to instill in us. Now, they can't have that, can they? A pretty safe prediction I have is to watch for another major distraction soon, maybe even a stage false flag event or disaster, to shift much of the attention currently focused on the immigration and southern border debacle and the dictator-style amnesty for over 5 million criminals. Because you cross the border illegally, you're a criminal, that they are taking so much heat for presently. Misdirection, redirection, nothing to see here. Now, for all I've said, before you jump on me with the comment, he did not start all this tyranny we suffer today. I agree. It's been happening in probably close to full bore for at least a generation. So I agree. Mm-hmm. But he sure as hell has played the game better and harder than any of his predecessors, bringing the game to a whole new level of reality. So let's discuss that. How about the serious increase in the number and scope of nations we are perpetrating hostilities against? The ones that we know of course. I wonder if Mr. Obama has his Nobel Peace Prize in a prominent place for easy viewing in the White House. Could there be anything more undeserved or defamed on this planet now? Are the members of the Nobel Committee kicking themselves in the butt daily for the shame and ridicule that they have brought on themselves and their foundation? Do they cringe every time a report of a new drone strike in any of a dozen countries is released recounting the number of innocent women and children that have been killed? Do they? How about no deficit reducing budget, something he campaigned on twice, to Congress in 6+ years, but having added more to the debt than any other president in history by a huge fashion. And probably by the time he gets out, he will have added more to the debt than every president that ever existed in this country combined. How about the massive freedom robbing and power grabbing executive orders and congressional bills he signed? And I've put out several articles about that. Go to the Liberty Beacon, just put in executive orders, hit enter in our search bar at the Liberty Beacon. You will see these massive freedom robbing and power grabbing executive orders and congressional bills that he has signed. Not vetoed, not pushed back against, he signed. How about huge political diplomatic failures such as Benghazi, Fast and Furious, and the huge IRS scandal for which nobody has ever answered anything sufficiently for yet? How about economy-wrecking bills like Obamacare, a bill that is doing more to tear down the middle class than any other mechanism in play today? Can you honestly believe that the big buck, highly educated economists and writers of this bill did not foresee these implications to working-class Americans when they were crafting the bill? Really? Do you believe that? How about the release of some of the most dangerous terrorists in U.S. captivity for an American who hates America? Only to have them, and this has been proven already, return to the fight against America with all of their pent-up hatred and drive for revenge. How about, yes, I'm going to continue, and how about his most egregious debacle to date? Failing his constitutional mandate to protect the American people by sealing our southern border. Let me explain something to you. All the excuses you hear about I'm trying to give Congress time to act is a line of bullcrap. because Congress was never needed to seal the border. To make immigration laws and policies, yes, but not to seal the border. It is a constitutional mandate of a sitting president to protect the citizens of the United States. At any point in time, this president could have sealed the southern border, and not only has he not done it, but he has actually weakened the Border Patrol so they can't do it. Okay, so this is by far not the entire list. This is only the issues and disasters that stand out or got the most attention. It would make, I don't know. I could make a serious wager to anybody out there, okay, that it's what we are not aware of yet that far outstrips what we already are aware of. Because not everything leaks. And if you can believe that this much evil and this much tyranny has been conducted, and that we're not only seeing the tip of the iceberg, you're an idiot. But even by what we know, there is far too much and too many more issues for us to mention in an article like this. Otherwise, it would be an encyclopedia. And guess what? All of this was on his watch. Not Bush, not his dad, not Clinton. All I have mentioned is on his watch, by his hand, and all, in the grand scheme of things, was done intentionally. But, the most miraculous part of all of this, it is all being accomplished while managing to keep a large but shrinking portion of the population convinced of his true benevolence through the constant shielding and propagandizing of a complicit mainstream media whose job it is to convince the sheeple all is as it has to be. Mm-hmm. So when do we the people decide that enough is enough? Because once they have all our guns, okay, and all of their jackboots, FEMA, TSA, DHS, etc., are all fully armed and in place, do you think they will just go quietly if we say please or pretty please? At this point, our options appear to be unite our voices now in a force that cannot be ignored or dismissed and effect the change we need to rebuild this public in the image it was originally intended, or blue pill anyone?
Which I gotta say is kind of funny, because there is a meme there where you have Barry's head on Morpheus's body from the Matrix movie, of course, and yeah, and it says, "This is your last chance. After there is no turning back. If there's a red pill and a blue pill, and the blue pill is half the price of the red pill, why not pay half price for things that's going to make you well?"
I busted a gut when I put that up.
That's pretty funny. I kind of tripped on it a little bit because it's just it's hysterical. It really is, and of course,
everything from this guy is a deal or a bargain. Everything is a deal or a bargain. So what is he going to tell you? You can take the red pill and be free, or you can take the blue pill for half price. Okay? You might not be as free, but after all, you didn't have to pay as much either. In other words, become dependent on the government. Take our handouts. You don't have to work as hard because the government is helping to support you. But guess what? There's strings attached to that, because when push comes to shove, you better remember what side your bread is buttered on.
Yeah, that is what it comes down to, is that, we'll offer you that blue pill. Of course, you probably need it because, you've already got your erectile dysfunction and all that from your GMOs and your other contaminants out there, so you probably need it, You know what I'm talking about. It's just one of those things, they like to push blue pills.
I have erectile dysfunction, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I just know from the commercials,
Okay, sure. Well, I know you ain't got it. You got a brand new baby, so.
Yeah, this is true, but okay, we'll leave that alone and let that rabbit trail go cold. But the thing is, it is funny to me that the blue pill is often represented one way, and of course, one of the leading pharmaceuticals out there that I would never advise anyone to take for any reason. Although I can understand maybe if you lost your capacity, you might want it. But
what do you think? Usually I do my rants verbally. I find it much more comfortable to do them verbally. Would you say that this qualifies as a rant?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you read it kind of in a subdued fashion for you, Roger, I'll say. But
yeah, I did.
And it's okay, because you know what? It's not one of those kind of days. I mean...
This was actually based on a rant I did as a guest on someone else's show, and I listened to it several times after that, not because I really liked the sound of my voice, but because I saw in it a really good article, a really good commentary. So I listened to it several times, and then I shut it off, and I started to write. And this is about probably 60 to 70% of the content of an hour-long rant.
Right, and it is really it's poignant as always. The thing is that it astounds me though, because I'm one of these people that often says, Obama is not the root of all this. He's not.
He's not.
He didn't set up the
He's the last leg of the relay race, and he's outperforming anybody who's been handed the baton before him.
Well, right. So in that way, mission accomplished. But that's what it is. It's mission accomplished. All of the mission creep before that. The relay race, however you want to coin it. I mean, it's just a matter of looking back and seeing exactly how this atmosphere was set up, and that's true. But yeah, this guy has amazingly run with the baton, and by no means does that mean that I support the other side of the idiot paradigm.
Oh no.
By any means. I mean, I'm tired of red and blue. I'm telling everybody it's purple. That's all there is to it. I mean, look, If you mix red and blue together, I mean, I know they don't teach this in school anymore. With the new math, I mean, you probably have to mix, blue, orange, green, yellow, and purple all together to get purple. And yes, I know I said purple already. But the thing is,
yes,
it's with the new math, of course, Common Core, another problem. Let's not go there.
What I really like, and I apologize for interrupting, what I really like and what I feel is the most graphic way of describing the left-right paradigm is this, okay? If I hand you a quarter, on one side is heads, on the other side is tails. Let's say Republican, Democrat, okay? But when you go up to the counter and you buy something for a quarter, it doesn't matter which side of that coin is face up, it's always going to buy the same thing or the same amount. That quarter represents both sides of our political system. But they are basically two sides of the same coin, which only does one thing: perpetrate tyranny on America.
And the other thing is, it is minted in one mint.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Federal Reserve. Oh my God.
There you go. It's minted in one place. It's coined by the same people. It's in the same design, and
it has no value, no real value.
The actual value of the thing has not changed. It's just what it is. I mean, except for when they used to actually make them out of something different. But that actually means that the thing inside of it is a little different. It's actually a perfect sort of analogy all the way around. And I always find it remarkable that red and blue are the two colors, and and the white is never there because that's a mode as opposed to a color. But this again gets into the strange discussion, right?
Actually, white is the absence of all colors. Most people think that black is the absence of all colors. White is the absence of all colors. Black is the presence of all colors.
Well, because scientifically speaking, what happens is that white reflects all colors because it absorbs none,
Right.
And this is why.
And black absorbs all colors and reflects none.
Right. So this is what the point of it is. But it is a strange sort of battle of semantics, because the teaching when I was in school was that white is actually all colors. The appearance of white is all colors. That is the way it appears, but the actual nature of the object is a little different. That's why it doesn't absorb the sunlight and all that, and that's why it's a lot cooler to wear white in the the sunlight.
Yes, you don't want to be caught out in the desert wearing black. Except now, you take a look at a lot of these Arabians riding their horses, and they're wearing black.
That's where I was going to go with that.
and the thing, and maybe maybe their brains need to be held at a higher temperature in order to function normally.
Well, either that or they're not actually out in the desert. But another problem conversation.
Yeah.
And it does amaze me. It really does. And like I said, all the executive orders that came before this, they were just the preparatory stages of what we're looking at. And of course, this guy's like the culmination of all this stuff. And why do I say this? And of course, I took some heat for this even before I started doing a radio show, because I dared to say something about this guy, because I recognized, even without being an outspoken person out there fully awake, I was aware enough to understand that this was just a prepackaged way to shut down debate, is what this guy represented. If you were part of the non-black population, he was presented to you as a way to keep you quiet, because here's the thing: you started criticizing him, you were only criticizing him because you were a racist, and this is the thing right away, right? But on the other hand, it meant that, look, if you support the liberal agenda, as it were, as presented to you by the same people who give you one side or the other of the quarter, like we were talking about earlier, well, of course you can't criticize him because he's your man, and he's the first guy to be in that office since our friend Bubba left. And therefore...
Bubba Bush?
No, not Bubba Bush. Oh, Bubba Clinton.
Oh, Clinton.
Yeah. I was looking for a better way to identify him, because I'm just so stuck on Hillary at this point that I have this, because we're faced with the no choice again, a scenario coming up with Jeb, which I still shudder at the idea of President Jeb, but even worse, the other side of that is, hey, here's your two lesser of two, greater of two, two evils at any rate, that you can choose from.
That's exactly what the 2016 elections are going to come down to again. And this is why I have lost so much faith in the American political system. First off, if you go back to 1932, Woodrow Wilson Theodore states unequivocally that presidents are selected, not elected. But now you come all the way back up here, and I will tell you that I am tired of hearing over the last generation. I know he's not perfect, but he was the lesser of two evils. When the best you can say about the person who will lead this country is they were the lesser of two evils, you have to wake up to the fact we're broken.
Well, there it is, because if you're left to decide between two evils, essentially, because otherwise, what is the phrase they would use? You're throwing away your vote. The thing is, I didn't throw away my vote. Somebody else did that for me.
When you know, and most people don't know this, that between 60 and 70% of the presidential votes are counted in Spain, outside of this country. Believe it or not, from the mechanical election booths or the electronic election booths are counted outside of this country by a company that is owned by, here you go, people, George Soros.
Oh.
Now you tell me how you're going to put any faith in that vote at all.
Well, yeah, this is, ooh, and check his little personal track record if you want to see exactly what a great arbiter of freedom and greatness he is.
This man goes around the country, fluctuating around the world, fluctuating sovereign nations' monetary systems, either causing them to collapse or either causing inflation or deflation, and making huge bucks off of it. This guy has made more money, and this is one of your total elitists, more money over a lifetime due to the massive sufferings of populations across this planet by fluctuating their monetary system. It is evil beyond anything you can believe.
Oh, right, and like I said, even to check his early history, you can see who he was quite happy to collaborate with, so long as it benefited him. It didn't matter what his his community was going through, and so on and so forth.
How
right?
about 3 generations of the Bush family supporting the Nazis?
Well, hey, trading with the enemies.
How about the Rockefeller Foundation supporting the Nazis and their eugenicist program? Actually funded by money from the Rockefeller Foundation to kill undesirable people off and purify the race. The Rockefeller Foundation, the same people that fund vaccines across the planet, and the Gates Foundation that fund vaccines across the planet, one of which, the tetanus vaccine, is under fire right now in the world courts because what they found out was, now let me lay this scenario down for you real quick, okay? Mm-hmm. They go to all of these third world countries and they offer a tetanus vaccine. Because when you're out in the bush or you're out in the jungle or whatever, it's easy to step on something and end up with tetanus. Something rusty, something that contains a virus, whatever, and get tetanus. So they went to all of these third world countries, supported by the WHO, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Gates Foundation, with this tetanus vaccine, and they offered free vaccinations to the populations with certain restrictions. Those restrictions were they would only give them to women between the age of 14 and 46. Stop and think about that. These are women of childbearing age. Well, a Catholic foundation in one of the Spanish-speaking countries in South America, it might even have been Mexico, found out about this and it raised a big red flag. So they had some research done on the vaccine, and what they found out was it contained components within this tetanus vaccine, okay? Components that sterilize women. So they vaccinated a lot of women in third world countries. Supposedly it was called, and it was, the tetanus vaccine, and sterilized a massive amount of poor women in third world countries, but not once were they told this shot is going to keep you from ever having a child. That, my friends, is eugenics in all its glory.
Well, right, and like you said, this is exactly the same people that not only funded but inspired the eugenics programs that people like to point to in Nazi Germany. The techniques and all of that were actually...
And when the war was over, a lot of the scientists that were involved in the eugenics programs in Nazi Germany were heralded over to the United States via programs like Operation Paperclip, and went to work for the U.S. government. This is the same government that funded a corn, and I think I talked about this on your show once, that funded a corn via a company called Epicite, a genetically modified corn whose only purpose is to sterilize men. You eat the corn, you ain't having no more babies. And it is, right now, illegal for you to search into a company's past to find out if the corn that's on the market today and you're eating contains the Epicite gene. Yet, in the United States, the most GMO'd country on the planet, we have the highest rising rate of infertility on the planet. But that's just a coincidence, right, Chuck? Come on.
Well,
That's just a coincidence.
And it's also just a big coincidence that that everything that is completely artificial contains all sort of derivatives from corn. So if you decide, well, I just won't eat corn, I won't get sterile. Guess what? It's in all of your packaged foods too. I mean, corn syrup. Where do you think that comes from? Or ostensibly where it comes from. I mean, most of it doesn't come from there, but I'm sure they mix some of it in. Yeah, the sweetener, right? All the sweeteners.
Yep.
Cereals, you name it. So
this gene is not only confined to, because there was research done on other things like grains, like beans, like peas. Okay, why? Since the rise in the mid-90s of GMOs in the United States, have we seen an inverse curve of the drop-off of fertility in the United States? That's just a coincidence. It is. You know what? I'm so tired of hearing that. The next time somebody tells me that, I'm going to go absolutely ballistic on them, because I want you to look the word up. Look up the word coincidence and see what the definition is. Coincidence means this hardly ever happens. But if we take everything the government says is just a coincidence, when someone like you or I rail against it, yeah, but that's just a coincidence. If we took every single functionary that they call a coincidence, coincidences would be far less rare than lightning strikes. Coincidences would be everyday happenings. Coincidences would be the most common thing on this planet.
Right, you and I both would have won the lottery 5 or 6 times. I mean, it's just
it's just a coincidence.
It's just a coincidence, yeah. It's just amazing when you think about the fact that there are so many people out there that don't yet even begin to see this still. We are growing in numbers, though. We are getting people to start to think about it, and this is the positive side of things. But it's still sad to me, and you know what? I understand. Let the gene pool sort itself out a bit. Let the fools go the way the fools go. But it's a little unfair at this point.
A lot more than unfair, because what we have is an elitist caste deciding what the future of humanity is going to be. People like you and I, we might not make the cut. What they decide is going to be what humanity is going to look like 100 years from now. And the rest of us will either be made in sterile, or in some cases, and I believe this could happen unless we put the brakes on it, in the future, we won't be allowed to procreate.
Well, right, and this exactly feeds into the the dystopian ideas that a lot of people do understand, which have been pushed in the media, like this is going to be part of the future. I mean, let's not forget that is that Hollywood and a lot of these other interesting places that create entertainment, quite often this is part of the game too. You notice that part of the dystopic future often revolves around you can't mate anymore, or you need a license to do it, or wait a minute, that sounds really familiar.
You remember 1984, don't you?
There
I don't
you
mean
go.
the year. I'm talking about the movie. I'm talking about the book.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that, right? And all of us who looked at that and said, oh my God, this is so good. This is a great movie. This is a great book. But that can't happen in America. I want you to go back and read that book again. Or watch the movie if you don't like to read. Watch the damn movie. And then look at the world you live in today and the world we're moving into tomorrow. And realize what Chuck just said was so spot on. A lot of the movies we considered science fiction in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s are knocking on our door in the first generation of the 21st century.
Well, right. This is exactly the point, and I mean, and it's not just on these fronts, not on the not on the fertility front, not on the political dystopia that was presented. Everything. I mean, I've said it a few times over the past few weeks because it's kind of appropriate. The Judge Dredd type scenario. Now you can be executed for not paying your taxes when you're selling loose cigarettes. Now you can be executed for resisting arrest. Now you can be executed for being a little boy with a plastic gun, too. So we have summary execution.
Now you can be executed if, let's say, you are a danger to a local individual who is running for the Senate. But yet, the powers that be feel they need to have this individual within the power structure in order to get part of their agenda to function the way they need it to function, to turn humanity the way they need humanity turned, okay? So you rail against this individual. If this state, by law, okay, decides that you are an enemy of the state because of the ideas you are railing against, they can not only stick you in prison for the rest of your life without any due process, they can assassinate you. This is legal in America. Did you ever think, ever, especially someone your age or my age, Chuck, you would live in a country where I can make a claim like that and be right?
No, this is exactly why I say all the time that I do apologize to all those that used to say these things were coming. I really do, because this type of thing was rarely mentioned in the 80s, in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, which is the only thing I have really good experience with, prior to the millennium. Okay,
we never even thought about these things in the 60s.
See, that's the thing. In the 60s, standing up and speaking out was something that was kind of fashionable, especially among certain groups and everything.
Millions, anti-war rallies, you've got to be anti-civil rights rallies by the million.
Right, and this is something that went on. There was a public discourse. What did they do in turn? They completely decapitated all those movements. The COINTEL pros destroyed all of the organic growth movements.
Decapitated them or impregnated them with their own agents.
Right, and not only did they do that in the progressive side of things, but in the more underdeveloped areas like the Ku Klux Klan, quite often you could find agents running those organizations as well. So of course they ran and funded and fueled both sides of the equation as a constant, and this still continues to this day. This is the thing. But now, of course, they made it a lot easier. They've streamlined the media so that only a handful of corporations actually are ostensibly competing, holding up the air quotes for you people out there, competing with one another in order
Which
to...
they're not even competing with one another, because they share board members like musical chairs, and they all sit on... They all work within the same cabal, moving in the same direction for the same goals. So any real realization of competition between the five organizations that control 90 to 95% of the media on this planet today, there's no competition between them anymore.
Exactly, and we witness this very easily by understanding that there are 6, soon to be 5 corporations that actually control the whole game as it is.
Yes.
And I know that when you were a kid, if you paid attention to these things, which you probably didn't, because it was just a thought that these people would compete with one another to outdo one another and all of that kind of good stuff. But even when I was a kid, the idea was still that there was, journalists competing with one another, there were entertainers competing with one another, and there were so many different individuals who could own a local television station, who owned local newspapers. There were families that maybe were, kind of entrenched and well off and all that because they'd been doing it for the past 200 years or something. But the thing was, there were communication companies that were actually owned by private citizens or family concerns, independents. That stuff doesn't exist anymore.
No.
It's all gone. So, of course, the information stream is just as contaminated as all of these things we're talking about. And
I've got to speak to that because this is the last thing I'm going to get to speak to. I've got to head out pretty soon here. What I just read through, the rant I just read through, okay? What the blank has happened to America, Obama. If 20 years ago, even any one of those issues that I brought up had been in the public's mind, impeachment or massive discourse from the population would have been at an insane level. Today we have a president who perpetrates so many evils, so many tyrannies, so many unconstitutional acts over and over and over again, and you hear no discourse. You hear no pushback from the media. Everything he does, he's doing for the good of the population. We have been dumbed down as a society to the point where my friends in Europe, when I ask them, what's the biggest change you've seen in America over the last generation? 2-1. One of the first things they say is America is so ignorant of what's going on in their own country. America is the most politically disconnected country on the planet.
Right, and they used to kind of mock us for not being aware of the occasional evil operation that would rise up and influence things out there. They would mock us for that on occasion, but now it's become a given.
Yes,
like no matter what, the people there don't get it. That's for sure. And this is the way they view us at this point. And I don't blame them because of what they're seeing. And, like I said before, the media, wonderful example of it. Because it's become a streamlined, bunch of garbage. And here's the other thing I want to say really quickly, and I'm wondering if you're going to agree with me or not. People talk about, well, we should just have Obama impeached, and a lot of these, I call them the, I'll be nice. The people that believe that they're part of the right-wing solution to the Obama problem, okay? That's the nicest way I can put it. Those people often talk about, impeachment and everything else. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, what good would that even do? Okay?
The Republicans will never impeach Obama for a very, very good reason. They fear, if they drag all of this through the mud, that their chances of winning seats or losing the House, losing the Senate, and losing the presidency in 2016 will rise tremendously. They don't have the balls, nor do they have the fortitude, nor the intent. And what you're saying is exactly right, Chuck.
Oh, right. And even to temporarily visit the idea of President Biden.
One thing before I run out, there is an article I put today on the Liberty Beacon. It was written by a very, very good and loyal contributor to the Liberty Beacon Project, Dave Hodges. This is an article I recommend everybody read, and if you can find the link, Chuck, if you would put that in your chat room. It's America's Epitaph. The U.S. will soon stand alone versus the nations of the world. I don't care whether you agree with the title or not. You need to read this article. We are being isolated. Before too much longer, America will be an island. This is exactly what happened to every nation that tried to dominate the world. Eventually, the world rose up against them. We are on that runway. We're about to take off.
Right, and I'm getting that together as we speak, and yes, I do see it published December 9th. Okay. Just making sure I had the right article, because Dave Hodges does a lot of articles on the Liberty Beacon. And by the way, everybody, that is the Liberty Beacon, all one word, .com. So I will drop that into the chat just as soon as I can get my browser.
Darkness. You always mention the falling darkness.
Well, absolutely, but it is no longer my favorite site.
So you don't like it anymore?
No, I do. I still like it. I still appreciate it. I do still suggest go to thefallingdarkness.com. I would definitely suggest you go there. But I'm starting to like the tlbtowncrier.com a bit more than the Falling Darkness as we build the archives over there. So,
not only that, but all of our major headlines are all on the right-hand side, and you can actually go to the TLB Town Crier and read some of the articles that are on the Liberty Beacon.
Absolutely. The headlines are there. On the right-hand side, you'll find the latest archives that have been posted. You'll see a schedule for what is being aired right now in the center. And then further down on the right-hand side, you see the Liberty Beacon headlines, which are posted there and are always really interesting.
Yeah,
and the host pages.
Click on host up on the right-hand side close to the top. You'll see a menu. One of the words is host. Click on that, and that's where all the hosts are. You can pick a host, click on that, go to the host page, and listen to their archives. So I've got to run, Chuck. As usual, the time flies when I'm with you. I'm kind of late for something else already, but thank you for having me on again. I really, really enjoyed my time with you. It's enlightening for me, and it always makes me feel good talking to somebody whose eyes are every bit as open as mine.
Well, I do appreciate it, Roger, and I can't thank you enough for taking out the time. And everybody, Roger Landry, the founder and main voice, in my opinion anyway, at the LibertyBeacon.com. Definitely a place to go, and I love all the stuff Roger does. And I know that there are a myriad of contributors over there.
Yes.
There are tons of them. Dane Wigginton, who is also on this network, is also a contributor over there on occasion. Also, this person, Zen Gardner, I want to look into who that is, because I know that's a...
she is the founder of Moms Across America.
Okay. But I love the name. I
Yes.
really do love the name, because it's just so apropos.
Very anti-GMO, very anti. She leads a legion of mothers in all 50 states across this country. There's chapters in every state in the country. She leads a legion of mothers who rail against the likes of Monsanto, who rails against political tyranny, who was starting to rail against vaccine issues. What I would call a very, very dangerous person if you're part of those mechanisms I just mentioned. You don't want to mess with mothers who are feared for their children. They are dangerous.
Right, and there's in one of the archives that goes to you as a host on tlbtowncrier.com, you'll see a show that I believe it's a show with the Moms Across America.
I've got two on there.
Two, sorry.
Actually, but the latest one, yes, that's the last conversation I just had with her.
Right. And so you can find out all about that there. And I'm telling you, it's definitely a pleasure, Roger. I know you got to go, and I do appreciate your time.
All right. Have a great night, my friend. And for all of your listeners, thank you for tolerating me for another hour.
Because we do this every Tuesday, and just about every single Tuesday, Roger Landry is definitely part of the conversation. I do love and appreciate all the work you do over there, and all of what you have to say on my show. It's definitely an honor to have you on all the time, sir. And I know you don't like the sir thing, but you know where it's coming from, so that's the way it is. And we will talk shortly off the air.
All right, bye.
All right, take care. Anyway, so I was going to grab another guest for the second hour, but instead I decided to leave it open for you guys if you wanted to call in. I do have the phones, 718-717-8296 if you want to join in on the conversation. If not, I'm going to go to one of my favorite subjects where there was a nice article published on the Liberty Beacon also few days ago. Let's see exactly when. December 7th, 2014. Okay. And again, we've identified Zen Gardner as the author, and I really did appreciate this article. I'm not saying that I would have worded things exactly like this, but pretty close in a lot of areas. It's pretty good. And you guys got to bear with me a little bit, because I am the terrible reader that I am, and also won't have the chat room in front of me while I do this. But what I will do, in case you don't want to put up with my terrible reading, for those of you in chat, here we go. There we go. Alright, now that's in the chat. Took me a second there. Sorry, I just went silent. And I did give you that link for the epitaph. Yes, okay. I gave you the link for the Dave Hodges article in the chat room, and also gave you the link for the one that I'm going to go through now. So, the name of this article is Controlled Opposition - The Hidden Hand of Misdirection. So, Here we go with Ochelli reading like he does. The concept eludes public awareness to a scary degree. It's similar to the reality of false flag operations, the epitome of carefully planned societal manipulation by unseen forces who have no regard for the human condition other than to control it at any cost. This is so similar to the slogan of nefarious Mossad, by way of deception, thou shalt do war, and the war is on us for subjugation, exploitation, and control of, ellipsis points, us, the human race. Nothing is as it seems, not the least of which is anything and everything in our engineered society. It's all misdirection, controlled opposition for the mind. The game of ruthless deception is endemic to the fabric of the entire matrix. Now we have a subheading which says, Useful Idiots and the Puppeteers. Continuing on with the article, the obvious Nations-backed ISIL creation, the insurgencies in Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, as well as most of the Middle East and now Africa, Hong Kong, and other nations, past and present, are perfect examples of controlled opposition on the political stage. As awful as that is, the problem is way deeper than that. Okay. We've all been useful idiots at one time or another. No one's been fully conscious or completely independent of these influences all of their lives. We all have to compromise in some manner just to survive in the matrix and unwittingly played into their hand. Or hands, depending on how you see it. At any rate, back to the article. The entire social landscape is an engineered one, and we help build and maintain it at varying degrees of conscious awareness until we disengage. Some aspects become more obvious than others to different people. The banking system, for example, has been getting hammered by the awakening. The full extent of its control is known by very few, but people are getting the idea, and it leads to more questions. That's how it works. Many people come to the awakening via health crisis we are facing, with contaminated and mutated foods being forced into the market without the slightest compunction for our ever so caring, slightly disguised crypto-fascist central state. Just going to natural food or alternative medicine sites is another way to go into the wardrobe and land in a Narnia of truth people had no idea existed. For those looking to help others, this is a great way to approach someone still under the spell to get them started looking around. GMO awareness has jacked up and is a great entry point. And just like the bankster revolving door with government, the Monsanto/Merck et al. Infestation of so-called health agencies, this will make their heads spin if they're willing to see it. Geoengineering and Fukushima are other portals to the awakening. The surreal potential, ELE, nature of these assaults is seriously disrupting many entrenched minds. Finding out the extent of our own involvement in it is a trip in itself, and will lead to many wonderful, sometimes disturbing discoveries. Even more so is realizing the source of information we were trusting was tainted, twisted, and distorted, or, as in most cases, a complete fabrication, i.e., lie popped up by the energy of those that believed it. Matrix battery pods powering the collective. Subheading again, what really matters. Religion, politics, education, and the economic meme are, of course, the most predominant in the mainstream mind. But important things like where we came from, why we're even here, and where we're going are barely addressed. And if they are, it's all gobbledygook designed to confuse and stifle the human spirit. or freeze it into a debilitating religious paradigm where we wait for the cavalry to save us and are told, quote, the powers that be are ordained by God. This is the true controlled opposition, although we'll get to the modern oracles of this insidious ploy soon enough. We have to see this for what it is. Anything short is not going to cut it. Just about every aspect of the opposing paradigms we've been handed as the absolute truth are designed, and even outside protesting elements who seem to know what's going on are often generated by or soon channeled by these same overlords. Here's where and how the manipulation kicks in. Just like the controlled state media propaganda, there have to be enough apparent facts to cultivate credibility. Just enough. They won't overdo it unless it's some innocuous subject. Many of those facts will be wrapped in fear and violence as well, designed to cauterize your sensitivity while heightening your fear. Religions have effectively done this for eons, tapping into your inner knowledge of the spiritual and mixing in a few truths. They have no problem steering you straight into a numbered state of docile subservience, a numbed state of docile subservience, to some weird-ass hierarchy of spiritual and physical abuse. In the name of God, of course. Name-dropping anyone? Oh, and in the name of that guy, they can send you or your kids off to fight their wars, build and support oppressive, exploitative corporations, or be a professional gladiator and gain fame and fortune, pounding other contestants into the ground to the roar of the frenzied flag-waving mob. Subheading: It's rarely black and white, deliberately. So I hope you guys are liking this article. I'm just going to step away and take a sip of my drink, because I got to do that from time to time, especially because my throat has been bothering me. I don't know, it seems as though a lot of people are reporting that. Of course, we're watching a lot more planes fly over our heads, and geoengineering, or the trailing, or the spraying, or the raid for humans, or whatever it is you want to call it. You know, it's definitely on the rise, it seems. Although they are saying that it's, surveillance because of all the civil unrest and all that good stuff. But, I'm a conspiracy theorist, so what do I know? Okay, back to the article. Layered in the imposed matrix are many overlapping memes and projected illusions, rendering fundamental empowering truths either hidden altogether, disguised, or distorted in a loving, uncontrolled, conscious world. There would be no need to hide anything. Instead, this mutant matrix system is built on deceit in order to spiritually disconnect and disempower those they wish to exploit. Think of the mega volumes of information and technology being held from public knowledge under the guise of national security, in quotes. How about, quote, closed-door meetings, end quote, or, quote, need-to-know basis, end quote, or the massive labyrinth of secret ops operating in their vast network built on compartmentalism in the name of science or military confidentiality. Now slide over to the Vatican, sitting on brutally gained secret history accounts for centuries. Does this make any sense to you? ? Why do they keep all this as separate concepts? ? Connect them and they form a picture, a very clear one. Our entire society is completely staged, controlled, and with vastly sinister intent. Fareed Zacharias is a confirmed CFR member. Is right above the subheading, Who's Controlling Whom? Rethinking the Strategy of Protest. Back to the body of the article. It's well known that the various elite foundations and other power organs such as Soros Empire finance various so-called opposition groups and protests. It is a very sleazy bunch dressed in do-gooder garb who manipulate with money, not compromising the cause, but misdirecting them into a validation of the very overarching structure they say they are against. It's time we learn to step out of these false, disempowering, matrix-affirming paradigm and know exactly what we are up against and take consciously aware action and not feed into their little chess game. Now, here's a reference, an excerpt, actually. By providing the funding and policy framework to many concerned and dedicated people working within the nonprofit sector, the ruling class is able to co-opt leadership from grassroots communities, ellipsis points, and is able to make the funding, accounting, and evaluation components of the work so time-consuming and onerous that social justice work is virtually impossible under these conditions. Paul Kibble. This is from, by the way, Paul Kibble, You Call This Democracy, Who Benefits, Who Pays, and Who Really Decides, 2004, and that's from page 122. Another footnote. While the, quote, globalizers, end quote, interesting word, anyway, while the, quote, globalizers, end quote, may adopt a few progressive phrases to demonstrate they have good intentions, their fundamental goals are not challenged. And what this civil society mingling does is to reinforce the clutch of the corporate establishment while weakening and dividing the protest movement. An understanding of this process of cooperation or co-optation, is important because tens of thousands of the most principled young people in Seattle, Prague, and Quebec City, 1909 to 2001 in brackets, are involved in the anti-globalization protests because they reject the notion that money is everything, because they reject the impoverishment of millions and the destruction of fragile earth so that a few may get richer. Continuing on with the excerpt, the rank and file and some of their leaders as well are to be applauded. But we need to go further. We need to challenge the right of the globalizers, in quote, to rule. This requires that we rethink the strategy of protest. Can we move to a higher plane by launching mass movements in our respective countries, movements that bring the message of what globalization is doing to ordinary people, question mark. For they are the force that must be mobilized to challenge those who plunder the globe. And that's from Mikhail Chozdadovsky, The Quebec Wall, April 2001. And I probably just butchered that poor person's name. Anyway, now getting away from the footnotes back to the body of the article. There you have it, the information war to bring these truths to a wider audience, sparking local action and alternative solutions in the face of this crumbling matrix of deceit. But it must be thoroughly identified for what it is before we know how to dismantle it while building real conscious community to supplant it. Pushing up against it in these channeled, compromised, and half-awake, antiquated methods only serves to reinforce it. Now, in case that sounded too weird because of my jerky sort of reading and you didn't quite understand it, this is one of the things that I always say, that we need to have our facts straight. We need to understand what it is we're actually screaming against, what it is we're actually speaking out against before we speak out about it. So this is one of those things that that is a huge sticking point with me, why it is that I'm irritated about even, the strangest deviation from the reality of history on occasion, why I actually go and correct people regarding, stuff that happened, different decapitations of different leaderships at different points in this country's history, as exemplars of the greater strategy that seek to silence and, in fact, completely quell political debate. That was all my commentary there, so now I'll go back to the subheading. The subheading now is the need for discernment. Sorry, the thing moved around on me. The need for discernment. I try to be very careful about what I read and certainly what I take on board in my mind and heart. I'll look at just about anything, even mainstream drivel, to keep an eye on stuff and get the pulse of what's going on. But not much. But I'm very careful. I know I get fooled sometimes like anyone, but I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. In fact, it's a joy every time that happens. Hey, I got another damn Velcro hook and loop off my spiritual body. Kind of an interesting aside in the article. And media outlets and information sources are something to look at very closely and carefully and keep watching. So, I always say double check their sources and stuff like that, and I agree with this part of the article wholeheartedly. Anyway, I'll never doubt, or should I say rarely totally clear-cut, as to who is who. Someone can be piping out a high percentage of true information, but then throw in some massive monkey wrench that few see coming. Sometimes it's the tone and lower vibrational level. I'm skeptical of crass self-promoters who are more caught up in their image than that of the message. Okay. They're usually humorless as well. If there's that much ego, there's much less conscious awareness, and the love starts running thin. If people can't see past all the evil in this world to the wondrous beauty of the universe and the amazing unlimited potential of the human spirit, I wonder about their information, or at least how it's used. But no one is perfect. So we need to see and process the good and the truth, and chuck the husks in the trash. I can take time and things morph, but that's all part of the process. It can take time and things morph. That's all part of the process. Okay, sorry. Next subheading, Snowden, Color Revolutions, WikiLeaks, Occupy, quote, parties, end quote, and other corruptible things. Keep a close eye out on these supposed whistleblowers. While we need real ones to come forward desperately, and there are many wonderful, brave souls, those that attain public acclamation by way of major media attention are always suspect. This is because the corporate media is completely controlled. So I get suspicious. They may let out some truth, but it's always to inoculate us against the full truth. There is no more responsible mainstream media today. It's fully controlled. And this, and I'm departing from the article now, this is part of the point that I was making earlier, that there is no such thing as any sort of free media out there. And in fact, they're well within the processes of co-opting all of what you might think is alternative as well. So I may be underfunded. I may not have, the greatest and widest spanned messages, when I do a show. But one thing I can assure you is that, nobody is writing a script, not even me. So that's the way it goes. I don't write a script. I don't prepare these things outside of maybe, an hour or two before I go on. I maybe take a few notes, or I decide that I'm going to refer to or read an article, something like that. But I don't have a script. I never have a script. I barely even have a game plan. I just do what I do, and this is what you get when you're listening to me. Anyway, back to the article, by the way. These 6 big corporations running everything media are a fascist cabal. Yes, that's a pretty good way to put it. Back to the article. I've written much about Snowden and my suspicions, as have many others. When the WikiLeaks phenomenon appeared, I and many others were again very skeptical. It was playing right into the globalist plan, not the least of which is to muzzle the internet and smokescreen real events like most disinfo outlets. It conveniently sidestepped, minimized, or dodged many of the really important issues, and sure enough, Assange was groomed in the oligarch's machine for years. Then when he came out and said 9/11 was not an inside job, that cemented the deal. Yeah, I have these arguments on occasion with people that tell me, and this is me departing from the article, I have these arguments with people on occasion that tell me that that these particular whistleblowers, these particular media figures who are out there getting the attention as, you know, part of the opposition to the to what we would identify as the greater globalist cause are something to be applauded and lauded in all sorts of different ways. But, you know, I just look at it as the disinfo agent who lays out some of the truth that people like those that I choose to associate myself with, those people, you know, we hear some modicum of truth in what they're saying, so therefore it sort of legitimizes the rest of the nonsense they pull, and then they can lead a lot of others away from the reality. You know, because, hey, part of what he said was the truth, so the rest of it must be the truth, right? Anyhow. So, thank you, Barry, for your message of encouragement. That's an aside to one listener. Okay. And I'll get to you toward the end. And here's why all this matters. So let me get back to the article before I run out of time on myself. Okay. It's very similar it's very similar to how these partial whistleblowers never mention Israel or the Zionist influence. Not even the Gaza genocide. Incredible, but telling. Okay, gonna stop there. Because if I get one more criticism about how I don't mention Israel, I'm really gonna scream. Okay, if I get one more of these private messages of somebody telling me that I haven't identified Israel as a criminal state, as a blight upon the planet, as an absolute symptom of the evil empire, you know, I don't believe. I think that if we wiped it off the map tomorrow, I think if it was gone tomorrow, you know what? This game would still continue. I could be wrong. I could be. But don't tell me that I don't identify it as part of the evil that is on this planet. Period. Zionism and the State of Israel are two of the most evil things in imagination and creation. So stop sending me those messages. Thank you. Okay. Back to the article, and we'll get into more controlled opposition as we go down here. The Occupy movement was clearly co-opted and engineered to be a controlled opposition. Release valve. Wonderful things still happened, but they managed to dilute and missteer the message enough to diffuse its greater potential effects. The Orwellian stomp down by the police state was off the charts, and of course the state-run media made nothing of it. Instead, they focus on seeming rioting, often consisting of stock footage of it. If there was violence, it was agent provocateurs, as caught in the recent Ferguson arson attacks in one particular block where a SWAT team was filmed lurking. But that movement is gone, not moving anywhere. But people got involved. That's good. But it lacked the full-on truth and was misguided. The Tea Party? ? Again, born of a driven passion to stand up within that paradigm. Now? ? Zionist stooges, Michelle Bachmann, Glenn Beck, and Hannity types are all over a wimped-out, quote, movement, end quote. A form of expression that desperate middle-class folks were joining in for the first time in their lives, neutered and detoured once again, and now a ridiculed arm of the flag-waving, war-mongering Republican Party. There is one major alternative broadcaster that I would say could be described in exactly the same way that this author describes the Tea Party. And I think we know who that is. Moving forward, another subheading. Back to the article. Who are the moles? Question mark. Who is the controlled opposition? Question mark. Here is an example that came to light that would normally go unreported by the mainstream media. This is a good sign. Now this is an excerpt. Did an undercover cop help organize a major riot? Bracket. Ha! When don't they? Close bracket. From the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, we learned that the police were institutionally racist. Can it be long before we learn that they are all institutionally corrupt? Question mark. Almost every month, the undercover policing scandal becomes wider and deeper. Today, I can reveal a new twist, which in some respects could be the gravest episode yet. It surely makes the case for an independent public inquiry, which is already overwhelming, unarguable. Before I explain it, here's a summary of what we know already. Thanks to the remarkable investigations pursued first by the victims of the police spies and then by the Guardian journalists Rob Evans and Paul Lewis, parentheses, whose book Undercover is as gripping as any thriller, closed parentheses, we know that British police have been inserting undercover officers into protest movements since 1968. Their purpose was to counter what they called subversion or domestic extremism, which they define as seeking to prevent something from happening or to change legislation or domestic policy outside the normal democratic process, which is a good which is a good description of how almost all progressive change happens. Yeah, that's true. Most progressive change usually starts with some sort of an outcry, which then leads to the changing of the legitimate mechanisms or the legal remedies that can be sought by a population. Of course, this is all my commentary. So, Zen Gardner, you're doing quite well. And again, love the nom de plume. Their influence is vast. We have no idea how many inroads have been made and how much the military-industrial government complex has infiltrated and controlled all we see and hear at this point, even within our alternative community. It's staggering, but it doesn't frighten me. It's expected. Follow your heart. You'll know. Subheading, the wake up, is it in time, ? What will you do? ? Clearly, we're up against massively orchestrated activities, outlets, and manufactured disinformation, and there's much controversy on this subject. It's a huge part of their agenda. Never mind, it's just the Matrix at work. Rise above it. But will humanity, quote, get it, end quote, in time? ? It's always in time individually. Once you've popped into now awareness and even begin to grasp the fact that all this is a sham and a fabricated facade, you're virtually home free. Personally, your participation in propping up the fake social landscape will fall off like our oversized pants. It just happens. However, the next step is the big one. Your participation, once you know and have gained a true perspective, it's time to take action. While the spiritual is supreme, we are here in these bodies on this planet now. And it's under a massive attack. Do you want your children and grandchildren to grow up in a world such as this one is rapidly becoming? Here I will, again, step away from the article to say, I don't want them to grow up in the world as it is. Not only what it is becoming, but what it is already. That's my personal idea here. I'm sick of watching what is now the new normal, okay? I really, really am. Different people have different types of solutions. This is the kind of thing that we all try and speak about. And you know what? I've got to admit, I don't necessarily know what is the best solution. I just know that I want things to be better. And I don't want things to progress the way that they are. That much I can tell you. And yeah, my ideas may shift and change a little bit over time. But if anything, they're becoming more radical compared to, most of the people that think that there's only a red and only a blue pill to be swallowed. There are many different colors, and personally, I'm trying to choose not to take a pill, but just to be myself and not require the pill in order to make the journey out of the battery pod. Again, that was my commentary. So, back to the article. However, the next step is the big one, your participation. Once you know and have gained a true perspective, it's time to take action. While the spiritual is supreme, we are here in these bodies, you know what? On this planet now, and it's under a massive attack. I already read this part. That was my screw up there. Rapidly becoming... Okay, now I got it. The blind guy reading live on air. This is what you'll get. Sorry. Okay, enjoy the awakening. But be responsive. Okay, let me start one more time. Take 3. Live radio. Enjoy the awakening, but be responsive. Take 4. Enjoy the awakening, but be responsive. We've all got to make a difference. That's where the revolution lies, right there. Respond conscientiously and in love, but do it. An opportunity is knocking on your door. Open it and step outside. If you don't see it yet, you soon will. Meet you there, and then it is signed, much love, Zen. As I said before, that's the article by Zen Gardner on the Liberty Beacon website. And it's all under that title, which I read to you before, Controlled Opposition, The Hidden Hand of Misdirection. And this is how it's explained without naming too many names, but really giving you a general, fairly concise description of how the game is played. And I do appreciate that. I definitely think this is one of those things that needs to be discussed more. I'm becoming increasingly sick and tired of being criticized and listening to backstabbing things going on behind the scenes regarding different alternative type individuals who broadcast, author things, whatever else. I'm actually getting tired of it. Here's the thing. I think that if we can encourage people to decouple themselves from the insanity that we all agree has been erected around us in order to be a control system, if we go after the entire system and don't just focus on particular belief systems that we think are in opposition to humanity, but understand that this whole thing is actually a giant, massive death cult. If we understand that, the genetically modified organisms, the geoengineered stuff over our heads, the contamination of the medical industry, turning it into an industry of death, murder, destruction, and sickness. If we understand that the politicians who are bought and paid for by the corporations, if we understand that they have lied to us all along, they have stolen our history, they have attempted to steal our humanity, they have attempted to steal our ability to have cognitive thought of any type. They have taken away what was independence and freedom incrementally and really, while we should have been standing guard over it. If we can understand that collectively, if we can do that collectively and get the rest of those sleepwalking fools who really, really require me to have to ask every once in a while, who ties your shoes? If we can do that and involve enough of them into the discourse, if we can get them involved in speaking up, complaining, standing out, refusing to participate in all of the system. And of course, this was a big argument on Saturday night about the level at which somebody could refuse to cooperate, could refuse to partake in the system, could sit back and be able to do their own thing, could reclaim those inalienable rights that we ostensibly had at one point. I mean, who knows? Who knows what could be accomplished if we could do that individually and therefore create a collective effect. Will it be easy? I doubt it. Will it happen in my lifetime? I'm not so sure of that. But I'm going to try to do everything I can to refuse and resist the system. And I'm telling you, I'm sure everybody who has heard me before has a good idea that this is one of the things that I've said before, so maybe I'm just boring you to death. I do apologize for that. But here's the thing, and I do focus quite a bit on the contaminated stream of information that people take as factual relation of reality into their minds. I do fight back against that because I believe this much. If we are not fighting against the massive mind control program that is out there, that is definitely infecting our fellow citizens who don't seem to understand that the red and blue is actually purple, and don't seem to understand that, no, it's not that, and that scary, scary statement that Dylan made on my show last week, that a whole lot of young people just simply believe that Barack Obama doesn't care about black people. No. I need to correct you. Barack Obama just doesn't care about people because Barack Obama is not really in charge. He may be a chess piece, but he's definitely not the guy who's making the onomatopoeia. But I'm probably just barking at the moon as usual, right? I'll tell you, it makes me angry to try and have exchanges with people that I do believe have some clue about the fact that the system is rigged, that have some clue about the fact that we are not, as the general population stands, the main concern of those who seem to be reaping profit off of the blood and suffering of those that I do consider my fellow human beings, regardless of exactly how stupid they actually are, they are still human beings. I mean, I love dogs, but I'm not going to hire them to handle my finances either. It's been a frustrating day. It's been a frustrating week. It's been a frustrating life. And I'll tell you why. It's because it always seems as though no matter what level of awareness I personally reach, I'm often just disenchanted with the idea of trying to disseminate that to others sometimes, which sounds really counterintuitive to somebody who does a radio show, 4 or 5 times a week, depending on what week it is. It does sound sort of strange. It does sound like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for those of you that, didn't get your 3rd grade vocabulary words correct and don't understand what counterintuitive might mean. The thing is, it does seem a little odd that I would take the time to speak to people on a constant sort of basis, and that I would try to just give them some things to latch onto so that they can begin to understand that exactly how completely and fully infiltrated every single piece of the game in the box is contaminated. This is not our game. We're not even the pieces. We're just allowed to get sick from the paint. This is the way this is going. And it's frustrating. It's just extremely frustrating sometimes, because what I'd really like to see is a massive uprising out of all of those who are still participating fully, thinking that everything is perfectly fine, there's nothing to see here, there's no problems at all, and of course Wolf Blitzer wouldn't lie to me, he has a beard. It becomes extremely frustrating. Anyway, again, if you want to join into the conversation and you're on my Skype list, just ring it. I'll bring you in. I only have about 10 minutes left. But whatever it is you want to sound off about, if you're a friend of mine, you're on. And even if you're not good, come on and yell at me about what I've said. It's fine. If you're on my Skype list, yeah, go right ahead. If not, 718-717-8296. I do have the phones for, like I said, about another 10 minutes, so feel free to jump on in, especially if you want to correct me. I like that, and besides, I wouldn't mind a little verbal argument to close out my show. It's all good. Which, by the way, you know, I want to say that regardless of what comes up in the next few weeks, because I've got quite a few personal challenges that I'm not going to get into on the air that are coming up, you know, it has been enjoyable to be able to talk to you people, and no matter what happens to me, I hope that something I have said at some point in time has stuck with you. I really do. I hope that maybe I've given you a few new things to consider regarding your own history, regarding your country, regarding your right to be a human being. I really hope so, and for those of you that disagree with me, I still hope the same thing. No matter what names you've called me or whatever else, and one of these days I'm going to devote an entire show to the hate messages that I get, because I think they're pretty funny. But the problem is you guys need to send me more coherent stuff, because I don't want to ramble on and not make any sense on the air. If I wanted to do that, I could just do like 2 hours worth of extemporaneous poetry and really confuse the hell out of anybody who sticks around for it, you know, waiting for a coherent sentence to come out of my mouth. But I don't think I would really feel good about doing that. I'd rather give you guys some information, some insight of some type. And again, I really enjoyed that article. So I think I'll just drop it again into the chat so you guys can see it. Because now I have the chat room back open, because, you know, I can't have too many windows open at a time. Also, you know, for those hate mails and all that good stuff, or if you want to just send short burst messages, anybody who wants to request a contact on Skype, it's just charles.ochelli, spelled Ochelli, and you know what, that's my ID, and I usually accept anybody who requests a contact, except these weird little ones that I'm getting lately, which are, you know, apparently from some foreign females who want to get to know me better, which is a weird phenomenon I'm seeing on Skype lately. I don't know where that's coming from, but, you know, the same type of thing you see on Facebook every now and then, where you try to open up a message and it's already been blocked as spam, scam, you know. That stuff seems to be happening a lot more. And, of course, other weird computer anomalies seem to be happening more. It does appear as though I'm not the only one, by the way, among all the people I talk to, so it sounds like maybe we're actually causing them to reconsider leaving this free internet intact, and of course everybody knows that already. I don't need to go into it. But I do advise that you think about the idea of controlled opposition, and though I do support the sentiment of those who are protesting in the streets doing their die-ins and their marches, and even the people that are doing some slightly rougher things in a couple of cities that the mainstream is accenting on occasion, you know, when they're not trying to whip up the paranoia ideal behind, you know, releasing some of the stuff that we already knew about torture and the summary report by Feinstein, you know, even though that has sort of taken center stage at this point, I'm sure we'll get back to the protesters and all that. Just remember that a lot of this stuff is orchestrated and put out there so that you will participate in, or think you're participating in, making a change sometimes when you're not. It is definitely often a distraction. It is definitely often something which is completely infiltrated and co-opted. So keep that in mind, and also remember, you know, the whole Feinstein thing, where I saw a clip of her really quickly before going to air complaining about the CIA once again hacking into the computers that the CIA gave her and all that other wonderful stuff. You know, this is all also part of the stage show. On Thursday, I'm going to bring Dylan back in to have a debate with Colton Montgomery again. That right-wing kid, last time the right-wing kid kind of handed him his head. But let's see if Dylan can redeem himself on Thursday. So that's what the Thursday Ochelli Effect will be devoted to, also at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then on Saturday, I'm going to have Frank Gregory Ford back on, because this is a guy who was president of Abu Ghraib's. This is a guy who actually had to resuscitate individuals who were, under the enhanced interrogation types of programs over there in Iraq and all that, and he can tell you directly about exactly what type of intelligence is gleaned from these types of techniques and what it actually means regarding the residual effects. I think that Frank Gregory Ford, whose lawsuit is still ongoing, may actually have something to contribute to that conversation, and we'll talk about the reality behind what the residual effects are regarding the intelligence operations that have raised the level of resentment among other populations across the planet toward us as Americans. And, if the ISIS crisis was real, it would have been grown by this kind of nonsense, which has been allowed to go on in yours and my name if you're sitting in the formerly United States of America at this point in time. And I needed another sip. So that'll be on Saturday night, which ought to be interesting. Then, of course, Tuesday will be Liberty Beacon again, and I have some other interesting guests coming up, some authors and some other people that I think will be rather fascinating for you guys to hear, at least to give you different ways of thinking about things, different perspectives. I think that all of these things will be rather interesting at any rate. Coming up. Sorry, I was distracted by something popping up on me, and now I've taken a look at it, and okay. So, they are protesting in other countries too, Desert Hawk says, huh? Okay. Yeah, I see that, and we have been seeing that, and there has been protests for a long time, the Arab Spring, etc., etc. In a lot of cases, though, this stuff is just being studied as a way to understand what would happen if there was a legitimate uprising in order to strategize. I'm telling you, look over your heads and notice that not only have the chemtrails been ramped up, but notice also that there are more military flights, if you're anywhere within the vicinity of a military base lately, over civilian areas, observing all of these things as they go on. This is part of the pinprick strategy. I'm telling you, this is just, let's aggravate part of the population and see what happens on a limited basis. It is the beta test, like I was talking about with Wendy this morning on Before the First Cup. That's what I think is happening. Listen, again, maybe I'm just crazy. But, hey, I'll take crazy over being, sleepwalking any day of the week. This is not a drill as far as I'm concerned. The perilous times that we are living in are definitely elevating, amping up, and increasing exponentially as we witness it. And unfortunately, we don't know all of the strategies that are being played against us as the general population, proceeds forward. We don't know it all, but we can sort of see the earmarks of what was and what is still to come. So, we have no progressive movements in reality. We have no particular points of unification in reality at this point. So the mass population is not going to be able to cooperate and rise up to unseat the oligarchies which do control the planet right now, or at least its resources and the general behaviors of the population. But again, my opinion, yeah, you'd protest too if your youth unemployment was 50%. Puzzled Barry. Yes, sir. You sure would. But of course, I think that we already kind of went to that point, and, all these people that don't have jobs do have a lot of time to protest, don't they? Kind of an unforeseen consequence, or engineered. Your choice. Think about it. Anyway, I say again, Thanks for listening to the Ochelli Effect on UCY.TV radio. I do appreciate every single person who has picked this up either on YouTube, further downstream via the MP3s, or if you've just gone to UCY.TV and listened, or used your TuneIn, or used your Shoutcast, or whatever apps you choose to pick this up. Thank you very much. And after me tonight will be primer time. So, funny thing, I got a message, what was it, last week about it. Immediately some new people had tuned to the network and wanted to ask me the question privately, how many gun nuts are there on that network? And I said, well, as far as I know, only the one show, but in case you don't know this about me personally, I do support people's Second Amendment right to bear arms also. So, am I a gun nut just based on that? And you know what's funny? I didn't get very many responses. But then again, I do support the general freedoms of most people to do anything that they choose to do, provided they don't harm others. Gee, that seems like a strange concept, doesn't it? So I'm done. I'll see you guys on Thursday with that debate with Dylan. Take care, everybody.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know what that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have just reads to